I've clicked onto the Global Tropical Overview for June the 7th, 2023. As is always the case in these videos, let's express your mind alone. And when making decisions ahead of any tropical cyclones, look towards your local weather office and official Tropical Cyclone Warning Center. They'll have the best information on that. So across the tropics today, we have our same 3 systems with an additional one in the West Pacific, actually. But we're going to start the same way that we did yesterday with the Atlantic view. You can see across the Atlantic we have not much going on. The main development region is pretty quiet right now. We've got increased ridging there, and we also have a little bit of dry air from the Saharan air layer there in the main development region making its way west. But generally, the Atlantic is fairly quiet as we go through hurricane season in the beginning. But we're watching mainly this system here, this large non-tropical low near the Azores, and this system could briefly become a subtropical cyclone. The National Hurricane Center still gives this about a 10% chance of doing so. But again, regardless of the development, you're going to feel impacts in not only the Azores, but also portions of Portugal and Spain, and even northern Africa. You can see some of those clouds expanding way down there towards northern Africa. So regardless of development from the system, we are seeing some land impacts there. There's the National Hurricane Center graphic. Again, about a 10% chance of that to do so. And if it were so, it would likely be a subtropical cyclone, not a full-fledged tropical cyclone. The sea surface temperatures here are only marginally conducive for subtropical development. So it really will not favor a or fully tropical cyclone, rather. But now we're going to move directly to the West Pacific. We have 2 systems we're going to talk about. The main one is Tropical Storm Guchol. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly in the West Pacific. This is east of the Philippines, and this system is now likely to recurve out to sea. We talked about last night how that was a fairly likely solution, but today we've really seen more growing confidence in that, and that is the expected track of this. But Guchol could become a fairly strong storm as it comes through. It could easily become our next typhoon. In fact, I'd expect it to in the West Pacific, as it will have a favorable trough interaction coming up as we get a trough digging down into portions of China, South Korea, and Japan, and it will give a good outflow channel, or enhanced outflow channel, I should really say, and that will allow it to potentially reach a pretty strong intensity before it reaches cooler sea surface temperatures. The second system we're talking about here is east of the Mariana Islands. It's this upper level low there, and as this system tracks towards the west around the ridge, it could potentially acquire some tropical characteristics as it moves west, though one of its main limiting factors will be Guchol, and it will have to deal with the outflow from Guchol. Look at some model guidance here. Here's the GFS tracks, and you can see that's pretty high confidence. Every member of the GFS ensembles is taking this system out to sea. It could certainly be an impact to Japan in due time as the system makes its way north and goes through extratropical transition, but we're not expecting this system to be a landfalling tropical cyclone in, say, the Philippines or the Mariana, or not the Mariana Islands, the southern Japanese islands. Now here's the pattern as we get out towards 3 days. Here's on the GFS, you can see a ridge here placed east of the system. This is going to really just direct the storm towards Japan, and the reason is it's rounding that ridge. And the reason the ridge can't extend further west is there's this trough, as I mentioned, digging in, and this is like a funneling act. This trough is going to work together with this ridge to funnel the system towards Japan. And I also mentioned that ridge could, or that the trough rather, could open a good outflow channel to the north. You can see on the 200 millibar flow, here's Guchol on the GFS, and it has somewhat of a good trough interaction, though that is not certainly the best one I've seen. But you can also see that upper level low there on the GFS, and that is, again, 90W now, I believe is what it's called. But you can see some of the flow expanding away from Guchol. That could shear the system and could limit any formation there. But regardless of development on that system, we could see some scattered thunderstorm activity in the Mariana Islands. And here's the European solution on it. You can see again this ridge and this trough here really funneling this system. And we may see as well this system perhaps get absorbed by Guchol when it goes through a tropical transition. But the main point here with Guchol, we're not expecting this system to be a big impact system like Mawar was. In the Philippines, we're not expecting anything too big. Here's the probability of tropical storm force winds, which is about 55 kilometers or greater. And you can see the greatest chance is in the southern Japanese islands, and that's about 5 to 10%. So not great odds here, and this system is going to remain out to sea. Certainly good news there. Now here's the forecast cone from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. You can see quickly becoming a typhoon here. Could become a strong one before it leaves the warm oceanic temperatures. Remember, we talked about this with Mawar. Once you get around north of Luzon, the sea surface temperatures and the oceanic heat content really drop off this time of year. And after that point, we'll see extratropical transition, and the system will weaken after that. As you can see as well in that forecast, staying well out to sea. So now we're going to move on to the Indian Ocean. We have Cyclone Biparjoy. I hope I'm pronouncing that one correctly as well. If I'm not, I'll try and correct it for the next video. But this system has been a roller coaster over the past 24 hours. Remember, yesterday it was an Invest 92A. Last night it got designated by the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. And then this morning, I'm talking UTC time of here, of course, but this morning in UTC, it got named Biparjoy by the Indian Meteorological Department. And we got a satellite estimate pass, which indicated that the winds in the center were about 70 to 75 knots. That would be 80 to 85 miles per hour, which was sort of surprising, at least to me, as this system does not really spell it as a 80 to 85 mile per hour system. But this system is sheared. You can see that with the very sharp cutoff here of the convection. So we do have some shear, and that is likely tilting the structure a little bit, and it's making it a bit deceiving on satellite. It looks like a much weaker storm, maybe getting towards cyclone strength with current satellite imagery right now, but earlier today, the system did not look like it was what that satellite estimate pass had shown. So the system has been a little bit deceiving. Now we got a microwave pass earlier today. Let me see if I can go to that page. Yeah, I can. And I think it's GMI that we got that microwave pass in. And yes, we did. And you can see it had a fairly compact core in there. I'll get a new page and zoom in there. You can see that really compact core, but it was only a half eyewall that it was managed to build. And this northern side was pretty weak, likely due to that wind shear. So this has limited it a bit, and shear is going to continue to be a little bit of an issue for this system, though given the current rest of the conditions and the possibility for some shear to decrease ahead in the forecast, we could certainly see some further intensification up to this, and it could certainly get to, say, Category 2, Category 3 on the Saffir-Simpson scale. Now, here's the sounding from the GFS. You can see that shear there. You can see about 20 knots there in the mid and upper levels, and that's what's been impacting the system today. And you can sort of see that tilt if you look in the thumbnail. The surface low is here, and we've got the mid-level circulation more placed to the west, so there is that tilt with height. And that is what is likely deceiving satellite right now, but is also going to limit Biparjoy for a bit more. Now here's the GFS 200 millibar flow, and you can see some of that easterly shear from this big ridge of high pressure over portions of Asia. You can see some of that flow coming into the eastern side. That is what is, again, impacting Biparjoy right now. But we do expect that the system will have a chance to intensify a little bit more. Here's the Joint Typhoon Warning Center forecast, and you can see they're expecting this to get to about 100 knots before weakening, as after a certain point when it gets far north in the Arabian Sea, we're expecting wind shear to increase quite drastically. We could see 30 to 40 knots of shear there, and that will likely weaken it. And we're going to now talk about some of the long-range stuff. This is 5 days out, so there's a lot of uncertainty on where the system could go long-range. But here's the general forecast here. We've got a ridge of high pressure here over eastern Africa. This is what's trying to pull this system west. But as the system comes west, we've seen the GFS and European come into more of an agreement on the system stalling in the northern Arabian Sea because it gets caught in between two ridges. It's hard to tell on here, but there is a developing ridge over central India. So it gets in sort of this pattern that just allows it to be stuck. Now, eventually this ridge over India does strengthen and it pushes the storm northward, and that's where you start to get some differentiating factors from the GFS and the European. The European still has the wind shear that it encounters, really killing off the storm and only putting a weak system going north, but the GFS still has a pretty strong system. Another important note is that this is 7 to 8 days out. This is Wednesday, June the 14th here, as this system comes up to the northern Arabian Sea. So there's a lot of time here. There's a lot of factors that we need still ironed out before we can say for sure where the system's going to go. But my main advice here in areas in Pakistan and Oman, just continue to monitor Biparjoy as it comes through. Stay tuned to the Indian Meteorological Department. They're going to have the latest forecasts there. And of course, stay tuned to your local weather office. They're going to have local information ahead of the storm. But that is all for today. Thank you all for watching. That is a lot going on in the tropics. Again, as a recap, we have this system in the Atlantic could bring some, or well, is bringing some impacts to portions of Europe and the Azores over the next several days. Could become a brief subtropical cyclone. We've got Guchol, which is expected to become a typhoon and not expected to impact land. It's expected to recurve east of Japan. We have this upper level low as well behind Guchol. Regardless of development could easily bring some impacts in the Northern Mariana Islands. And we also have, again, Guchol, which could become a strong system in the Arabian Sea before wind shear starts to kick up and it gets north of there. And once again, uncertainty is there for track as this is well over a week out. But I'll have future videos later this week and into next week as these systems carry on. But thanks for watching. That's it for now.